Welcome and thank you for standing by. At this time, all participants are in a listen-only mode until the question and answer session of today's conference. At that time, you may press star one on your phone to ask a question. I would like to inform all parties that today's conference is being recorded. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. I would now like to turn the conference over to Allison Hunt. Thank you. You may begin.
Good evening and welcome to this Food and Drug Administration media briefing on the Moderna COVID-19 vaccine emergency use authorization. I'm Allison Hunt with the FDA's Office of Media Affairs. In a moment, I will turn it over to FDA Commissioner Stephen Hahn for opening remarks. Following Dr. Hahn, Dr. Peter Marks, the Director of FDA Center for Biologics Evaluation and Research, will also provide brief remarks. After the remarks, we will then move to the question and answer portion of the call. Reporters on the phone will be in a listen-only mode until we open the call up for questions. As a reminder, this audio call is being recorded and live streamed on the FDA's YouTube channel. When asking a question, please state your name and affiliation. Also, please ensure questions pertain to today's announcement and limit yourself to one question and one follow-up so we can get to as many questions as possible. With that, I will now turn over the call to FDA Commissioner Dr. Stephen Hahn.
Thank you, Allison, and thank all of you for joining us. This evening, the FDA granted the second emergency use authorization for a COVID-19 vaccine. This authorization for Moderna's COVID-19 vaccine comes just 1 week after we authorized the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine. With FDA's authorization, this additional vaccine will soon be distributed throughout the country by our federal partners. This is another crucial step in the fight against a global pandemic that is causing vast numbers of hospitalizations and deaths in the United States every day. Through the FDA's open and transparent scientific review process, 2 COVID-19 vaccines have now been authorized in an expedited time frame while adhering to the rigorous standards for safety, effectiveness, and manufacturing quality that the American people have come to expect from the FDA. These standards and review processes are the same we have used and intend to use for any future COVID-19 vaccines. This process included input from independent scientific and public health experts, as well as a thorough review of the data by the agency's career staff. The FDA is considered the gold standard regulator of medical products. The process that the FDA uses to review is respected worldwide because of a well-established history the agency has among the most rigorous and accurate review processes globally. The FDA's expert review staff reviewed hundreds of pages of technical data about this vaccine thoroughly, efficiently, and transparently. And as previously mentioned, FDA hosted a public advisory committee meeting where we saw a robust discussion with external independent experts, just like with the first COVID-19 vaccine issued last week, EUA issued last week. The committee's input supported the FDA's own determination that the Moderna vaccine's known and potential benefits outweighed the known and potential risks. The transparency around our review of the Moderna COVID-19 vaccine should assure the public that this vaccine met the FDA's rigorous standards for quality, safety, and efficacy. As with any decision made by the FDA, this authorization was guided solely by science and data. This decision was based on the strongest scientific integrity, and I am proud of the work that our career scientists have done. We worked quickly based on the urgency of this global pandemic, not because of any external pressure. Even though the process has been expedited in association with the review of this emergency use authorization, we have not cut corners, but rather have cut through regulatory red tape that can sometimes slow down the process. I'd like to take a moment to thank the career staff at the FDA, which includes more than 17,000 staff who have worked tirelessly to respond to this pandemic. Now, with one FDA-approved treatment and several treatments authorized under EUA, along with 2 preventative vaccines authorized under EUA and more potentially in the pipeline, we truly hold the promise to alter the course of the COVID-19 pandemic. Now I'd like to turn to Dr. Peter Marks, our Director for the Center for Biologics Evaluation and Research, for a few remarks.
Thanks very much, Dr. Hahn. So today's emergency use authorization of Moderna's COVID-19 vaccine is another milestone as we work to end the COVID-19 pandemic. Guided by our careful review of the science and data, we've determined that the vaccine's known and potential benefits clearly outweigh its known and potential risks. The data provided by Moderna have met the FDA's expectations as described in our June and October guidance documents, and today's authorization demonstrates our steadfast commitment to the health of the American people with the assurance that our scientific standards and integrity have been maintained. We also considered, as part of our own review, the advisory committee's recommendation, with members overwhelmingly voting that this product's known benefits outweigh its known risks. Today's achievement is yet another testament to the dedication of FDA's career scientists and physicians who have been working urgently to conduct comprehensive and rigorous evaluations of the data submitted for vaccines to prevent COVID-19. Their tireless efforts, as they continuously engage with sponsors to provide feedback on technical issues over the past several months and carefully planned and executed an expedited review process, got us to this point. As we stressed with the authorization of the Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine last week, our work evaluating vaccines does not end with the authorization. And we've made clear we expect vaccine manufacturers to continue to study their vaccines and to move toward licensure. Also, the FDA is requiring that Moderna, like Pfizer, conduct active follow-up for safety, including monitoring for any significant adverse events to inform the ongoing benefit-risk review and assessment of the vaccine. The FDA and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention will also collaborate to conduct extensive safety surveillance on an ongoing basis. We're confident in our finding that the Moderna COVID-19 vaccine meets our rigorous standards of safety and effectiveness. However, as previously noted for the Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine authorized a week ago, out of caution, we note that the Moderna COVID-19 vaccine should not be given to individuals with a known history of a severe allergic reaction to any component of the vaccine. Additionally, we're requiring that appropriate medical treatment for the management of immediate allergic reactions must be immediately available in the event an acute anaphylactic reaction occurs following vaccine administration. Before we turn to the question and answer portion of this media call, I want to end by noting that the FDA's review process means Americans can trust and be confident in all vaccines, including COVID-19 vaccines, reviewed by the FDA and available in the United States. We're humbled and privileged to be entrusted with our mission, and we're very grateful to have helped in this significant achievement today. We're now the first country that has authorized 2 COVID-19 vaccines that demonstrate clear and compelling efficacy, and we look forward to advancing additional vaccine candidates over the coming months. Thanks so much. And now I'll turn it back to the moderator to begin questions and answers.
Thank you, Dr. Marks. At this time, we will begin the question and answer portion of the briefing. As a reminder, this call is being recorded. When asking a question, please state your name and affiliation. Also, please ensure questions pertain to today's announcement and limit yourself to one question and one follow-up so we can get to as many questions as possible. Operator, we'll take the first question.
Great, thank you. Our first question comes from Matt Perlone from AP. Your line is now open.
Thanks for taking questions. With the authorization of this new vaccine, obviously we're going to have millions more Americans introduced to this mRNA platform. Can you tell us, we've now had 3 of these adverse reactions reported in Alaska. Can you tell us what FDA is doing specifically there to get to the bottom of that beyond communicating with Pfizer? Is there an issue with a particular batch that went to Alaska? Anything you can tell us about what you're doing there?
Matt, thanks for the question. First of all, I just wanted to mention that FDA takes very seriously the safety of the medical products that we authorize and approve, and certainly in the vaccine setting, it's one of the reasons that Dr. Marks and his team, in collaboration with the CDC, has set up a very robust surveillance system for assessing safety. And one of the things that FDA does, I think, very well and uniquely is really getting to the bottom of events like allergic reactions so that we can completely understand the circumstances and better inform the public and also our regulatory decisions. Dr. Marks, you might want to speak to the issue of the platform and allergies and what we're doing moving forward.
right? So I think we are working hand in hand with the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and we've actually been working closely with our United Kingdom colleagues who first reported these allergic reactions. And I think we'll be looking at all of the data we can from each of these reactions to sort out exactly what happened. And we'll also be looking to try to understand which component of the vaccine might be helping to produce them. So I think the good news is the surveillance systems are working correctly. This safety signal that we will further investigate. I think we have at this point the right system in place, mitigation strategy with the availability of treatment for severe allergic reactions being at the ready, and we'll continue to monitor very closely.
Is it accurate to say that the consumer information is identical for them now on allergic reactions, or is there any difference?
To the best of my knowledge, those are the what we have in the prescribing information is pretty much identical.
Okay, thanks.
And that's out of an abundance of caution because we simply don't know yet with the Moderna vaccine.
Operator, we'll take the next question, please.
Our next question comes from Michael Ehrman from Reuters. Your line is now open.
Hi, it's Mike Ehrman from Reuters. Any concerns that the side effect profile of the Moderna vaccine is going to hurt its uptake?
Peter, why don't you take that question?
You know, the side effect profiles of these two vaccines that are now deployed are reasonably similar. As you note, I think you are noting that there is local discomfort is pretty common after the second dose of these vaccines, and there are some other systemic side effects which are generally mild and go away after a day. I think that ultimately, if these are managed well, if we communicate the expectations well, I think particularly among those who are eager to get back to a normal life, which I think that includes many of us, there will be reasonable uptake of this, and we'll continue to communicate about these side effects to help people be prepared to know what to expect.
Operator, we'll take the next question, please.
Our next question comes from Helen Branswell. Your line is now open.
Hi, thanks. It's Helen Branswell here from STAT. Can you please tell me, does FDA have a preference, or would FDA give guidance to people delivering vaccines on which to give to someone who is pregnant? I know that there may not be a possibility to choose at the point of delivery, but if there is an option to take one or the other, there appears to be more data for the Moderna. Would that be FDA's recommendation?
Peter?
I'm happy to take that one. I don't think there's. I think either of these vaccines at this point has equally little information on safety and pregnancy. On the other hand, I think we also understand that there were pregnant women that were treated with these. There are people now that are entering registries. So I think this is where we would leave it is either one of these vaccines is a reasonable choice after a woman has a conversation with her healthcare provider about the potential benefits of the vaccine versus its risk and the potential risk of COVID-19 and its adverse effects on pregnancy. So it's a benefit-risk consideration, and I don't think we have something to recommend one or the other of these at this time.
And Helen, I do refer you to a statement that went out. I believe it was earlier in the week from a number of OBGYN organizations that referenced this particular issue and highlights what Dr. Mark said, that a conversation with one's physician provider is quite important in this regard.
Thank you. If I could ask a quick follow-up. During the VRBPAC meeting last week, this week, both companies talked about doing the DART studies that FDA had asked for, and yesterday Moderna talked about setting up the pregnancy registry. I don't recall hearing either of them say they were actually going to study the vaccine in pregnant women. Have you had discussions with them about that, and are those studies going to take place?
So there will be studies that will be undertaken. The exact design of those is still under discussion, but some of those are already getting underway.
Can you be more specific?
Operator, we'll take the next question, please.
Our next question comes from Anna Edney from Bloomberg News. Your line is now open.
Hi, thanks for taking questions. So, Dr. Marks, you mentioned a second ago that the FDA was trying to see which component of the vaccine could be producing allergic reactions in regard to Pfizer. Can you talk about kind of what components you could be looking at, and are there any that might be reasonable to expect an allergic reaction from, and are they shared between the Pfizer and Moderna vaccine?
Right. So thanks. Very good question. So, although I think we're just speculating here, so I'm going to say what I'm going to be doing. It's a little dangerous, but it's always dangerous to speculate. But it is known that one of the components that is present in both of the vaccines, polyethylene glycol, can be associated uncommonly with allergic reactions. But what we're learning now is perhaps those allergic reactions could be somewhat more common than the highly uncommon that we thought they were, because people do get exposed to polyethylene glycol in various pharmaceutical preparations. It's something that's in some bowel preparations, et cetera, and some laxatives. So that could be a culprit here. And that's why we'll be watching very closely as we see the Moderna vaccine rolled out. Obviously, if it is a common component, we might see it with the Moderna vaccine, but we don't know that for a fact. We just don't know at this point, and we'll just have to use our good pharmacovigilance to monitor what's going on.
Thank you.
Operator, we'll take the next question, please.
Our next question comes from Eben Brown from Fox News. Your line is now open.
Hi, good evening, Eben Brown. Thanks for doing the call tonight. Going back to the Pfizer vaccine, there has been a revelation that there's some extra doses in those vials, and I know that I'm wondering, is there any further FDA guidance on that? Because if there's allocating thousands of vials with tens of thousands of doses, you end up with thousands of extra doses. And would a similar scenario play out with the Moderna vaccine? Would there end up being these bonus doses out there?
Dr. Marks?
So thanks. So the way this was calculated originally was using a certain type of syringe. So what ended up happening was the Pfizer vials had enough overage that when the vials are used with a kind of syringe that are called low dead volume syringes that they're getting used with, people are being able to get 6 doses, and some are even saying they're getting a 7th dose out of these. Obviously, in the setting of a pandemic, where every person that can get vaccinated matters, we're not going to let vaccines go to waste. So within what can be done safely, such as getting out a full number of doses, we are going to encourage that. So it is likely that in the next week there'll be more formal information coming out on how to do that. But for right now, we've notified pretty broadly that as long as you can get full doses out of the vial, be that 6 doses or 7 doses, that you can use as many full doses as you can get out of the vial.
And would Moderna have a similar scenario?
So Moderna is in a little bit of a different situation because the Pfizer vaccine it comes frozen and is reconstituted after it's thawed with a diluent, whereas the Moderna vaccine is just thawed, and so that it may be that this will be less of an issue. But obviously, we'll be watching to see what happens as it rolls out. There's always overfill in these vials because when you draw up syringes, there's some inaccuracy, some wetting of the sides of the vials and et cetera of the syringes. So as per the USP, there's a certain amount of extra volume that's always put into vials, and we'll just hopefully it's been calculated pretty closely, and we'll just see what happens. Again, we're committed not to seeing wasted vaccine in this setting.
Operator, we'll take the next question, please.
Our next question comes from Derek Gingery from the Pink Sheet. Your line is now open.
Hi, thanks for taking the question. During yesterday's advisory committee, there seemed to be at least an opinion of several members that in terms of maintaining the placebo control in the clinical trials now that the EUA has been granted, that Moderna should follow the same method that Pfizer is employing. Has the FDA decided with Moderna how that's going to work yet, and can you tell us what they're going to do?
Peter?
Yeah. I can't speak to that yet because there are conversations still ongoing between FDA and the sponsor, and those are between us and the sponsor. Thanks.
Thank you.
Operator, we'll take the next question, please.
Our next question comes from Meg Terrell from CNBC. Your line is now open.
Thank you. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the data that Moderna included in its supplemental documents for the VRBPAC meeting yesterday about asymptomatic infection, and when you expect to see more data on really knowing if this vaccine and Pfizer's as well can actually prevent transmission.
Here, again, that's for you.
So I think the data that they presented was, I think, intriguing. I think it's hopeful. I have been in discussion with NIH colleagues. The NIH is in the process of considering initiating a study which will get at this definitively because it would be a randomized study where they vaccinate a cohort of people and then look with nasal swabs to see if they are able to carry the infection versus those who are receive a placebo, and that might, there are some populations, for instance, college students, where that type of a study can be done, and it still can be done because those are people who would not be eligible for vaccination in the very near future. So hopefully those studies will get up and running because that is a critical thing to get answered, whether these vaccines can prevent the asymptomatic transmission. And as you rightfully note, it's intriguing, but we really need more robust data to know for sure. Thanks.
Operator, we have time for one more question.
Our last question is going to come from Sarah Owermall from Politico. Your line is now open.
Hi, thanks for fitting me in. A lot of my allergy questions got answered, so I just wanted a quick follow-up on that about how many cases of severe allergic reaction cases have actually been reported to the FDA and if they are all in Alaska. But then also to piggyback on Meg's question, Dr. Marks, you mentioned NIH discussing some trials on transmission. Is NIH or either of the companies discussing the possibility of trials to see how long a single dose lasts in some form of protection?
So let me take the second question first, which is the question. There's this question of whether a single dose of one of these mRNA vaccines would be appropriate to use, and that'll obviously have to be studied. And there are some that might be interested in studying it, but I don't know of any studies that have started yet in that regard. And the other question was about the allergic reactions. I think it's fair to say that there have been allergic reactions, a few allergic reactions reported from different states of the union. I think that the total that are under investigation is roughly about 5, but the one that has been best investigated, where I think we have the most information, is the Alaskan, one of the Alaskan events, and I know there's a second that I think you're talking about. So we will continue to watch these closely. I think we have to. It's difficult to talk about them with any kind of good certainty until we have more information about them. And we'll obviously be monitoring very closely what's going on. We're working very closely with CDC on these. And there have been meetings between CDC and FDA pretty much every day this week, making sure we're keeping very close track of what's going on.
Okay, thank you.
This concludes today's media briefing. A replay will be available on the FDA's YouTube page. The FDA's press release has been posted on the agency's website. If you have follow-up questions, please don't hesitate to contact the FDA press office at fdaoma@fda.hhs.gov. Thank you. Goodbye.